Hello, and welcome to a new episode of When All Is Read and Done. I'm Josh.
And I'm Amy, and this is a podcast where we make sense of the world one book at a time. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. And if you're a regular listener, welcome back. And this is our penultimate episode. It's been quite a ride, and as usual, thank you all for your support week after week.
Well, penultimate episode as in second last one for this season, right? We are not closing the podcast down after this.
Penultimate episode for season 1. Yes.
Yes. So this episode will be picking quite a bit of fun at Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and our book buying habits.
Mm-hmm.
And, while we try to keep our episodes light where we can, we also want to acknowledge that there will also be some of us who, due to the pandemic, find that buying books is an unaffordable luxury right now. Here in Malaysia this week, we've actually seen a wonderful outpouring of citizen-driven support through the White Flag Initiative. Mm-hmm. And we hope that however you're coping with this pandemic, that you stay safe and are able to access the support you need to make it through. So if you're tuning in to get your mind off things, we hope you'll be able to get as much enjoyment out of this episode as Amy and I got in putting it together.
Absolutely. You know what this pandemic has done is further, wealth, health, and social inequalities. And we have seen that in the UK as well. So today we will be touching a little on our least favorite billionaire in the world, whose net worth increased by an obscene 75 billion in the year that most people have suffered immensely. But the wider topic of inequalities is a topic that we hope to cover in a future episode.
Yeah, and Amy, I'm not going to be asking you to list your favorite billionaires.
I don't have any.
That's the right answer, right? So this week we're going to be looking at Rocket Man Jeff Bezos, Amazon, and how they've changed the game for better or worse for how we book lovers shop online. And Amy, you're going to kick us off with an Amazon story, right?
Yeah, so I must make a small confession. When I sat down at my laptop to prepare for this episode, I just made a purchase on Amazon. So before you berate me for this ironic situation I now find myself in, I must tell you that I actually drove all the way to my local high street this morning. I paid £3 for parking. I went to about 5 or 6 shops and still couldn't find what I was looking for. So I came home, I made a cup of tea, and I went on Amazon to search for the item that I wanted. I got over 1,000 results and all the options that you can think of. So I really do hate it when this happens. I go out of my way, try to not support Amazon, to buy from brick and mortar businesses in the community. But at the end of the day, Amazon just shows how unavoidable it has become. So now, Josh, I know you currently live in Malaysia where Amazon is not widely available. But do you remember when we were students in the UK, like a couple of years ago, and every new student gets 6 months of Prime for free? How was that like for you?
Yeah, so when we were talking about doing this episode, I pretty confidently told you, right? Oh, I didn't really use Amazon that much. I think I only purchased like a carton of Maggi noodles. But I was dead wrong, Amy. So I went through my email and here's a list of stuff that I bought with my Amazon Prime account. Okay, so here we go, yeah. First, a guitar and the Adario bronze medium guitar strings. Then I brought an electronic weighing scale, 2 bottles of hair pomade, an Alice in Wonderland pop-up book for my goddaughter's birthday, and the William Shakespeare's Star Wars trilogy for my brother. And of course, there was the Asam Laksa Maggi noodles. I think the scary thing is this. The reason why I forgot all those orders was because of how easy it was to make them, right? Like just a click and my guitar arrived the next day, ready to drive my flatmates up the wall with Wonderwall. So you truly get desensitized to that kind of convenience. And yes, I didn't buy a single book for myself from Amazon. Look, it was just a different time, okay? What little reading I did at the time was academic for my master's, so don't judge me.
Well, I'm just distracted because I didn't know you could get Maggi Asam Laksa on Amazon.
You can!
I'm going to resist the urge to search right now. But I know exactly what you mean by being completely desensitized to that kind of convenience. So Amazon is profiting from our collective laziness. I remember when I first activated my Prime account, I felt like royalty. Maybe I was living under a rock before that, but I genuinely felt like the future has arrived. My first order was no surprise here, a book. So it was Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens. My roommate recommended it. I made 2 taps on my phone and it arrived at my house the next day. And you can literally do this to any item you can think of. I think personally, though, I am like a hopeless romantic. I love vintage clothes, secondhand books, old cars, and I was really, really adamant about not owning a Kindle because that would mean the death of books as we know it. but I was gifted one a couple of years ago. And fast forward to today, I have more than 400 books on my Kindle. It's embarrassing.
400? 400? I don't know if I've read 400 books in my life. Well, okay, I have, but still, that's a lot. Okay, so Amy, we have established that you can buy all sorts of things with Amazon, right? You haven't told us what you went to all that trouble going to find in your local high street, but I get it. We all have our secrets. What is not a secret, though, is Amazon's humble beginnings. But just in case we have listeners who might not know how Amazon started, why don't you fill us in? Because Amazon didn't just start fully formed selling guitars and Maggie noodles and Amy's secret things, right?
It's not a secret. So I wanted to get, disposable face masks. You would think that that would be available everywhere now, but apparently not. You still have to hunt for it. So anyway, I'm sure that most of you will already be familiar with this origin story. Jeff Bezos, he founded Amazon as an online bookstore in 1994 in his garage with an initial investment of a measly $250,000 from his parents. So you may be interested to know that Bezos initially wanted to name his company Relentless, which is a prophecy for the kind of company that Amazon would become. In fact, if you go to www.relentless.com, it actually still redirects you to Amazon. But in 27 years, Amazon has gone from an online bookstore that branched into diapers, toys, electronics, to their tagline, the everything store. And when they say everything, they mean everything. It's not only the largest online marketplace and retailer, it is also the biggest AI assistant provider, live streaming and cloud computing platform. It has acquired Whole Foods, Twitch, IMDb, and most recently, the film and television studio MGM. And most notably for its readers, Amazon Publishing, Kindle devices, Audible, Goodreads, Book Depository, Ape Books, Booksfinder, Comixology are all owned by Amazon.
Man, Amy, okay, so I really want to talk about the Book Depository, but before we do that, they're really not kidding when they call themselves the everything store. So did you know that Amazon has opened a 1,500 square foot Amazon salon in Spitalfields?
What?
Like there's
I didn't know that.
there is a delicious irony that Londoners are being offered a solution to pandemic care from a man who hasn't owned a comb since the 1990s. So maybe you could go have a look and let us know what you think. Though it is rather pricey though. So cut and blow dry will actually set you back £53.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, I was shocked when I found out that in 2011, Amazon had actually bought up the Book Depository, or Book Depot as the cool kids call it. And then I read an article in The Guardian which said that prior to buying up Book Depot, Amazon already accounted for 70% of UK internet book sales. 70%. And its biggest competitors was Book Depot and Play.com. Play.com doesn't even exist anymore. So a behemoth just happened to get bigger and swallowed its closest competitors in the process.
Yeah, Amazon is controversial for many reasons, but what you've just mentioned is probably the most notable, how it has used uncompetitive tactics to undercut its competitors. This is known as predatory pricing, which is actually an illegal act of setting prices astronomically low at a loss-making level in the short term to eliminate competition and to gain market share. This makes markets more vulnerable to monopoly, and this is bad because if a single company monopolizes the market, it has free reign to do whatever the heck it wants, set prices, reduce quality and innovation. So you will find many instances of Amazon pricing out their competitors, but what's most interesting for a podcast is, of course, how Amazon has affected the book selling and publishing industry and why many readers are now boycotting Amazon. For a company that started as an online bookshop, Amazon has often displayed anti-competitive practices such as price control, making books harder to purchase to drive publishers out of competition. And prominent authors like Stephen King, Ursula K. Le Guin, and countless others have spoken about how these practices are affecting their livelihood and their ability to sell books. And a literary agent told the Wall Street Journal that they aren't gaming the system, they own the system. And this is essentially what a monopoly does.
Yeah, absolutely. And that attitude of domination, I think, is something that is inbuilt into the company itself. So Greg Bessinger, in his New York Times opinion piece titled A Final Word Before Mr. Bezos Blasts Off, mentions a conversation that he had with an Amazon executive who said, "We had beaten publishers into submission Amazon asks for a nickel, publishers know to give a dime. So it's that sort of monopolistic arrogance, right? The outrageous wealth inequality that Bezos represents, as well as his terrible employee management practices, which we'll get to in just a little bit, that has got almost 138,000 people to sign a change.org petition called Do Not Allow Jeff Bezos to Return to Earth.
Did you sign it?
Because okay, I did not sign the petition. But after increasing his net wealth by over 70 billion during the pandemic, Bezos is blasting to outer space on a rocket ship on July the 20th.
God.
But contrary to what those people want, and knowing Bezos and Amazon, what we're probably going to get is him delivered back to Earth the next day.
Have you seen photos of Bezos's rocket?
I have.
If that monstrosity makes it to outer space, it should just stay there. I suspect that it's also like an astronomical compensation for something else, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. You mean
also,
space schlong?
Yes, that's what I meant. And also, what is with these damned billionaires and rockets? So let's call it what it is, right? It's basically space colonization. First, that was Musk, and then Bezos. And then just this week, Richard Branson also entered this billionaire space race. I don't know, if you had all the money in the world, would you A, eliminate poverty, B, pay your employees a respectable living wage, or C, freaking blast off into space? But coming back to what you said about this obscene wealth inequality, I think this is the key reason that many people are now uncomfortable with using Amazon, but cannot move away from the convenience that we've gotten so used to. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so there is a very real human cost that's attached to Amazon's operations and our obsession with next day shipping. So Jodie Cantor, the co-author of She Said, which we are both fans of, together with Karen Weiss and Grace Ashford, they published a New York Times report titled Power and Peril, 5 Takeaways on Amazon's Employment Machine. And it was just published last month, and you can find it in our show notes. It detailed some truly horrific employment practices in JFK 8, which is Amazon's only fulfillment center in New York City. So according to the report, JFK 8's turnover rate is roughly 150% a year. 150%! It goes through the entire workforce about every 8 months. That sounds about as sustainable as the time when the dim sum shop where my brother lives had a 1 ringgit for a plate of dim sum offer for its grand opening and ended up closing within 3 days. And you know what they say, Amy? Sometimes you win some, sometimes you dim some. But I digress. Amazon is also infamous for what Cantor, Weiss, and Ashford call a culture of fear born out of Amazon's tracking system, which monitors every single minute of workers' shifts. Employees are constantly living under a cloud of worry that should the tracking system deem them unproductive, they'll be fired. So last week, tonight's episode on Amazon had an interview with people who were too afraid to go to the bathroom for fear of having their productivity ratings drop. That just sounds inhumane to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And something must be said about a company that net profited $26.9 billion in the pandemic year alone, which was more than the previous 3 years combined. This was only made possible due to the warehouse workers working around the clock in extreme conditions, delivery drivers having to perform under pressure to fulfill unrealistic quotas. But to deny workers the basic labor rights to unionize is frankly disgusting. And Amazon's solution to this criticism is to install, get this, wellness pods in its warehouses so that workers can sit inside and watch meditation videos. And guess what these wellness pods are called? Amazon. So workers can get injured, catch COVID, and being racially discriminated against, but at least they're Zen.
Yeah, there's also the case of Alberto Castillo, who Amazon emailed informing him that he had to return to work after months off on medical leave. The only issue, Castillo had been among the first employees who had tested positive for COVID-19 at JFK 8, and when his wife, Anne, received the email in September last year, Alberto had suffered from extensive brain damage, with doctors telling Anne that he would never speak, eat, or work again. And Amazon knew all of this because they had to. They were the ones paying his disability payments. And yet he got summoned back to work. So Bezos, in a 2016 Vanity Fair interview, said, doing things at high speed, that's the best defense against the future, which sounds an awful lot like Google's motto of move fast and break things. But it sounds Like what all that high-speed moving is doing comes at the expense of health, safety, and job security. So if I stand for worker rights, I should no longer support Amazon or Book Depot, right? Right? Unfortunately, for myself and many readers who use their services, the reality is often out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, now some people might think like, well, aren't all these, basically a policy issue? Shouldn't states set a mandatory minimum wage or audit working conditions? Why should us, the consumers, bear the moral brunt of this? Like, we just want cheap books, right? So on Amazon, ebooks go for as cheap as 99 pence. Standard hardbacks and paperbacks are sold on Amazon for a much lower, sometimes as low as 40% of the recommended retail price. So this means that it often sells books at a loss so that you come to rely on Amazon as your go-to retailer. Maybe returning for a bigger ticket item, like a TV or an Alexa you didn't need, perhaps even forking out £79 per year for a Prime membership, joining the over 200 million people worldwide who use Amazon Prime and paying a premium monthly or yearly. So feeding this behemoth that is only getting more and more powerful.
Yeah, and speaking from the perspective of a graphic novel collector here in Malaysia, it is almost impossible to resist the call of Book Depot. So there is the question of availability. We don't have local comic book stores here, which is where I would buy my graphic novels and omnibus if I were in the UK or US. The large chain bookstores either do not carry them, or when they do, the prices are up to 20 or 30% more expensive than Book Depot. So many overseas alternatives that I have looked at for graphic novels can't match Book Depot prices because of one huge factor: shipping. When your average omnibus can weigh between 2 to 3 kilos per book, shipping costs add up fast. And Book Depot being able to offer free shipping, which really isn't free, it's just factored already into the price of the books, but that is a huge draw. So I have started to buy my graphic novels from in-stock trades in the US, which offers FedEx shipping and discounted prices that bring the graphic novels to about the same price as Book Depot, and they arrive faster too. But with them, availability is an issue. If it's not something new, it's likely they wouldn't have it. So we come back round to the same question again. Just how much do I care about workers' rights? Do I care enough that I'll have to cut down my graphic novels buying by 30 to 40% a year, or not own the graphic novels I want because they're not stocked at a reasonable price anywhere else apart from Book Depot? It's a question that I'm still struggling with, honestly.
And it's not just graphic novels, right? For many low and middle income countries, Book Depository, so I'm not going to call it Book Depot because I'm not one of the cool kids. Yeah, and Book Depot, fine, might be the only option for books within a price range that they can afford. If I lived in one of these countries, I might think, hey, £10 per hour minimum wage is more than what I make. So let me buy cheap books for my children in peace. After all, why should you pay £9.99 or 60 ringgit for a paperback at a bookstore if you can get the same for £4 on Book Depository and have it delivered to your door for free? But selling books at this dirt cheap price has associated costs to the bookish community that you care about as well. So doomsayers will say that if we continue to go down this monopolistic path, Amazon will soon become the sole online and physical retailer of books, a dystopian future where Amazon has priced out all of their competitors, including publishers, distributors, and all stages of the supply chain. A world in which authors can only publish with Amazon Publishing and Amazon dictating what gets published and what doesn't, and readers only having one bookstore option. I know I might be slightly contradicting myself here, but I don't fully agree with that. And I just wanted to discuss both sides of the coin here. Yes, I do think that Amazon should pay their workers a fair wage, stop undercutting businesses, but I don't necessarily agree that we're going to see a book buying culture that is Amazon or nothing. If you look at business trends, online retailers have put big chains such as Borders out of business. However, in recent years, more eclectic independent bookstores have thrived. Physical bookstores still offer many things that online stores cannot, like author events, personal recommendations, on-table or in-store promotions, and just that wonderful feeling of being physically surrounded by books. So as a consumer, a generic chain such as MPH in Malaysia or Popular does not offer much more than what I can find online, and it's no surprise that they're downsizing. But I have, and I would go out on a limb to visit an independent bookshop here in my neighborhood, to have a chat with the bookseller, or to have coffee with a friend, or to attend an author event and ultimately pay more for a book. Then it becomes about the whole experience and not just the simple exchange of money and product. Maybe Amazon isn't completely obliterating the bookselling industry. It is perhaps forcing it to evolve.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure I share your optimism, Amy. And there's also the fact that myself and maybe a lot of book readers, especially in the pandemic, have grown away from wanting to browse physical bookstores and have started buying a lot of books online. And that's a really tough habit to break, right? So gone are the days where I would wander the aisles looking for the latest title to catch my eye. Ain't nobody got any time for that. I now have a budget and a list of books that I've meticulously researched and read a ton of reviews for. And I cannot remember the last non-fiction book that I impulse bought from browsing a physical bookstore. Maybe Kim Gatlas's Black Wave, and that was like 2 years ago. At the end of the day, you've got to do what's right for you. So for some, Amazon's unethical, anti-competitive, and exploitative practices that allowed them to evolve into the behemoth they are today will be enough to put them off Amazon and its subsidiaries forever. There are others that just won't care because price and convenience trumps everything. And there are still others who might be willing to come back to Amazon should they be willing to put reforms in place. I think it's up to us to figure out which camp we belong to. So yes, Amazon is making all the right noises right now. So this Thursday, Amazon actually added 2 new corporate values: strive to be the Earth's best employer. I think that's where the Amazon comes in.
Oh, gosh.
And success and skill bring broad responsibility. Only time will tell whether they will actually make good on these principles or if they'll be as useful to the workers as Amazon Salon is to Jeff Bezos. So in the meanwhile, the next time you're tempted by an Amazon or Book Depot listing, and I'm speaking to myself here as well, bear in mind that hidden behind those sweet low prices and absurdly convenient shipping is a very real, very human cost.
Yeah, for our RADRecs this week, we will be talking about some Amazon alternatives. I understand that this is not something everyone has access to, but if you can, do support your local library. It's free. Your favorite authors get paid when your library buys their books. And these days, you don't even have to leave your house. You can download Overdrive's Libby app, register online at your local or national library. And yes, you can connect to multiple library memberships and have access to thousands of ebooks, audiobooks, and graphic novels. And this is available in Malaysia as well. I have read and listened to hundreds of books for free using Libby. And of course, living in the UK, this is a haven for independent bookstores, and I'm always spoilt for choice. But I've visited a new bookshop and a wine bar in my neighborhood, and I have to give them a shout out. They're called Book Bar, and they are in North London, close to Finsbury Park Station. And the founder, Chrissy, has the most excellent taste in books. I walk into that store feeling like this is my dream library. And also, lastly, if you continue to use Amazon or Book Depository because none of these are accessible to you, that's absolutely fine as well. No one is canceling you, and least of all us. And after all, we're all addicted to the convenience, and addictions are hard to break. And I confess that I still use Amazon if I'm looking for something very, very specific.
I'm just so envious. So I Googled Book Bar and it looks like the coziest place. And then sometimes you send me pictures of the graphic novel selection at the Barbican Library, and man, I just miss living in London. I think when it comes to collecting graphic novels, it's going to be difficult for me to wean myself from Book Depot. I did buy my latest T.D. Walden book, Alone in Space, directly from Avery Publishing. So hooray for me, I guess. I am committed to seeing if there are reasonable options out there, but I have to admit it isn't looking good so far apart from in-stock trades. So if any of our listeners have any good alternatives to Book Depot, do drop me a line. I'm glad we did this episode, Amy, even though it has left me feeling like a bit of a hypocrite. If nothing else, it's made me resolve to actually give our Malaysian independent bookstores a try. So I've also read that bookstores make excellent date options, so that might be an extra incentive for me to check them out. I've been to Lit Books, and there's also Gerak Budaya, which I have yet to visit. But the closest one to my home, though, is Silverfish Books. So that's probably the first one that I'll visit when the lockdown is over. And who knows, after being indoors for so long due to the pandemic, maybe those like me are ready to learn how to love physical bookstores again.
If you like this episode, do subscribe to When All Is Read and Done on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to support us, please rate, review, or share this episode with a friend or loved one. This would really help our little podcast grow and reach new listeners.
We would love to hear your feedback and comments on this episode or any topics that you would like us to cover in future ones or even in season 2. So you can reach us either on Instagram at radanddone or via email at radanddonepod@gmail.com. So Amy, like we teased at the start, this is our 9th episode. The 10th one will be the final one for season 1.
Yeah.
Do you want to give our listeners a hint of what to expect in our finale?
All I will say is free Britney.